You want to be the best podcaster in the world, you have to see yourself being the best podcaster, having the guest you want. You have to see yourself having Mark Zuckerberg on your podcast or whatever it is. You have to have the vision. So having a vision is extremely important. You have to be able to close your eyes and see the damn thing that you want to achieve.
Welcome back to the Ways Podcast. We got another episode today. My name's Mohammed.
My name is Osama.
And we're back with a beautiful episode. Today's topic, not really a topic, we have a special guest. And when you said the word comedian, it's an art form. It's an art form that's been around for decades, for generations. And when you have great people like George Carlin, when you have great people like Richard Pryor, Chris Rock, Eddie Murphy, the time goes on and the perspective goes on and the insight goes on. But in this time and age, comedian of sorts is seen as something that's super controversial. People are looking to cancel it. People are looking to take away the art form, what a comedian can say versus what they can't say. And it creates a huge conversation about what is comedy at the end of the day. Is it freedom of speech, or is it limited based on what people want to hear? And this is why it's such a beautiful time and space to have this guest, because not only does he give you an outlook on his life, his perspective, his insight, but he's able to tie it in such a way that's beautiful, curated, and it's really educational for us. And that's why we are so lucky to have Sammy Obeid. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today, sir?
Thank you. And if I say the right things tonight, I'm going to get you all canceled too. Let's go, baby. Let's do this.
I'm ready. Super ready. Before we get started, let everyone know where they can follow you. What's your social media?
Sammy Obeid. You don't even have to learn how to spell Obeid, even though it's a very easy name to remember, like the past tense of obey, Sammy Obeid. Full name's a complete sentence. All you gotta do is you gotta put in Sammy O and it'll autofill the rest, because that's how far I made it.
Perfect. And my first question for you is, when it comes to comedy, especially this being an art form, what is cancel culture and why is it so big and so synonymous with this era, with this social media generation?
Cancel culture. I don't think cancel culture is really a thing. I think it's a term that's been used to describe a phenomena or a bunch of different actions, but it's not an actual. People always say the cancel mob. There is actually no uniform cancel mob. It's when people start to dislike somebody, or a bunch of companies want to cut their ties with somebody because of something they did. You can call that cancel culture. But the thing is, we have this term cancel culture as if these people are working together, but generally they're not.
And for you being on stage, like I've seen your clips, like when the three guys were leaving and stuff, do you yourself criticize or look down on comedians where they feel kind of scared to touch on certain topics because they know that people might be recording, might write a blog or a post trying to take down their content or overall their career?
You watched the video where the three guys left?
Yeah.
Did you see why they left?
Yeah, because the parking.
Yeah, it's the parking pass.
Parking pass.
Parking was expired. It really has nothing to do with the topic we're speaking of. But I will say, people have walked out on my shows before because of things that I've said. In this instance, it was because I was going on for too long and their parking had expired.
No, and yeah, it was super funny and interesting when you saw that clip. And as far as you connecting and tying it, that was pretty dope. And now we get into the topic. As far as your background, where did you grow up? Tell the audience how you grew up.
How I grew up, I mostly ate and slept. But I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area in California, Northern California, and spent my most of my childhood years growing up in the East Bay Area. I was born in Oakland, California, and grew up in a city called Berkeley and a city called Fremont.
And as far as like your family background, where are you from as far as the country?
My parents are both half Lebanese. My dad is half Palestinian, and my mom is half Italian and white.
That's pretty cool. And as far as that mix and that blend of culture, how does it make, as far as your content, where you're talking different crowds of people and trying to connect with them and relating to things that they might not know, how does it make it easy for you to relate to those people in the crowd when you talk about different stuff in their culture, and they might think that you don't know about that, but based on the mix and the blend and the backgrounds that's from your lineage, how does that make you feel when you see that spark in their eyes?
Well, I think it's very nice to see the spark in their eyes, because sometimes the spark in their eyes is like racist, but sometimes it's a very pleasant spark in their eyes. I think I was blessed to grow up in a diverse community, so I had friends of all sorts of different races growing up, and was able to, talk to different people of different backgrounds and learn a lot about different cultures. So now when I speak about them, I'm at least educated from that perspective. Um, so it is nice to be able to do that. I also think that because of my mix and skin tone and the fact that I have the ethnically ambiguous look, I can get away with a little bit more, which is a privilege, but also there is a responsibility to do justice with it and not just like say a bunch of racist shit because you can, which I can, but I don't. I like to kind of bring people together by speaking about different cultures very freely, which some people might not feel that freeness because they didn't grow up around those people and they don't kind of have this kind of hall pass of a look, if that makes sense.
I was gonna say to add on to your point because I feel like a lot of your like jokes, like things that I've seen, it's almost like you're sending a message. Like the first clip that I saw was the one that the most popular holiday is the Palestinians' birthday. So you kind of like address the issue in more like in a more comedic way. So to me, I feel like you're always
Yeah.
trying to send a message. Yet like you're trying to make people laugh, but like there is also like a message behind your jokes. And that's the first video I saw.
Right, right. This world is filled with information, and I find information very interesting. I find knowledge very interesting, and obviously, knowledge is always changing. Information is always being contested. But when you can learn something with humor, you tend to remember it better, and that's always how I learned as a kid. So I like having information in my humor as well.
I have a question for you. Do you think it's a lot harder now to develop a unique comedic voice now, just because like there's so much maybe comedians out there, so much have been spoken about. So for you as a comedian, obviously going in every show, do you
Yeah.
feel like you have to always have to reevaluate yourself or like see what like keep up with updates and stuff like that?
Definitely. I don't think that's a current thing. I think that's something we've always had to do. It seems at times that because there's so much comedy now and there's so much comedy content that it's harder to stand out. And it is. But I think because I'm so far into the game, I've been doing it for 16 years now. So I'm so far into the game that I don't really have to think too much to be original, because I already kind of know where my angles are carved out. There's not a lot of people who are like doing math humor. There's not a lot of people who will like go so hard into talking about Palestine. There's not a lot of people who will like commit to a pun to their death. There's not a lot of people who proudly tout being into astrology. There's a lot of avenues in comedy that are generally people shit on math, people shit on astrology, people don't want to talk about Israel Palestine, and people think puns are corny. I flipped all of those and just went headfirst into them. And so I have some things that I know that people don't do, but every now and then, as time goes on, there's going to be a comedian who's, oh, this comedian is, kind of doing what I do now. And then you have to figure out, well, how am I different? I have 10 years ahead of this comedian, so I can find another way to pivot. So we're always recreating ourselves. The best comedians always recreate themselves and always get rid of their old material, write a new hour every year or whatever it is you're writing every year. And we're always constantly reinventing ourselves. The best comedians always do.
Yeah, to add on to your point, like you said, you've been doing it for 16 years, which is incredible. And obviously, you could tell through your like comedic your videos and like the fact that like you're seasoned, like you're able to like control a crowd. My question is to you is like after all the success you've had and obviously continuously to gain more success, how do you keep staying hungry and like sharp in terms of like you don't want to lose that momentum?
Hmm. Yeah, that's always a challenge. Whenever things go well for us, it's easy to get complacent. Um, like I'm finally like getting checks where like I can have a living wage and I can like eat food again. And I'm like, oh shit, food's great, man. I don't even need to work anymore now that I can eat. But the creative process is what's driving me right now. I love coming up with new material. I love coming up with a material that's current. I love being able to comment on a current event in a way that nobody else can because of all the years that I wield in the game, and being able to attack it right away. So that keeps me moving. And the fact that, even though there's so much content out there, the fact that we can put our stuff out and it could go viral at any moment is really, really thrilling and motivating, just to know, like, let's find that joke. Like, what's the best joke about inflation? Are you going to have it? What's the best joke about the war in Russia, Ukraine? It's a risky topic, but are you going to have the best bit? What's the best joke about cancel culture? Who's going to do it? So I think that creative process is driving a lot of comedians like myself, but it's definitely driving me right now.
And when you started out, obviously you're trying to find your voice, and that takes time. And regarding whether it's comedy or music, you're always like emulating a style of people you're influenced by. When you started doing videos and comedies and going out to different clubs, was there anyone as far as comedians that you're kind of emulating their style before it took time for you to develop your own voice?
Yeah, I think that's 100% true that we all do a little bit of emulation early on. And to be honest, I emulated a lot of different people so that people never knew who I was emulating. Like, early on, I had a lot of bits that had the cadence of Chris Rock. Um, but I've been accused many times of emulating other people. I've only been accused of emulating people that I look like. This is because people are inherently racist, and uh, just they're subject to like seeing something. But like, for a long time, I had the cadence of Louis C.K., but was getting accused of being Hassan Minaj. You know what I mean? Because people are so dumb that they only see. So for a while, people said Hassan Minaj, people said Aziz Ansari. There was early on when I kind of had longer curly hair. There was this comedian Arj Barker, who people would say that I was doing Arj Barker. Hilarious comedian, and I definitely was emulating him for a point. But I was emulating so many other people at once. But I was only being accused of the people who I look like.
And when it comes to Chris Rock's a legend, as we all know, right? And the cool thing is he's respecting this time and also respecting the previous generation as well. And it's kind of amazing to look at his story, how he was mentored by Eddie Murphy, and how Eddie actually put him in Beverly Hills Cops 2 and took him on the road. And that whole come up, and even in the early 90s on him being at SNL, he still was finding his own way. And it wasn't until he really took his independent route and with the 1996 special, Bring the Pain, that's when Chris became who he was, right? What do you see from Chris, and what do you like about Chris, and what did you learn from Chris watching his specials?
Well, Chris, like me, is an Aquarius. Hey, I feel like the way he does comedy is very similar to the way I do comedy, and from what I've heard, he does. But like the way he breaks down a topic and the way he likes to go on stage, from what I understand, he likes to go on stage and just see if the joke is funny as it's written, without adding any gusto to it, any kind of like emotion to it. He just want to see if the joke is funny itself, and I do that a lot too. I just want to see if the joke has legs and the words stand on their own, and if it does, I'll go full on and add the emotion. But Chris Rock was probably the first comedian who I saw that made me go, wow, comedy's really cool. When I was a kid, I watched Bigger and Blacker in 1999. I think this was shortly after it came out. And I was just in awe of how amazing the special was and how he hit the nail on the head with all sorts of like topical stuff. And I was, a young teenager. I was like still learning about like what was going on with like Monica Lewinsky and you know the arguments between Republicans and Democrats at the time, even just the surface knowledge that I had, he was able to speak to me. That's how accessible he was. He was able to take something that was going on and make it relatable to everybody, and also just like say what we were all feeling and make it super super funny. So immediately I was like, wow, comedy is a social tool. Comedy is a way to speak about the truth and make it relatable and make it interesting and make it funny. And that whole thing that he did, which a lot of comedians did before him and after him, but he is a master of that. And I'm really thrilled about his recent like comeback, because he's bringing that same Chris Rock gusto to the stage again, and it's really inspiring.
We mentioned like a lot of different comedians, and my question to you is like, when you were like on your upcoming, and obviously like you made that transition to go into comedy, what comedians would you watch and ask yourself, I want to get to that level, like, or like replicate that level, or even like take your own lane? Who would you go watch and study?
Can you explain that question a little bit more? Like, why would I study them?
Just in terms of like, like obviously like you're going like I'm assuming, I'm not sure if comedy was your first thing you want to get into. I'm not,
Okay.
but in terms of like when you would go research about like comedians like you looked up to, for a sense, like who would you go
Yeah,
watch and look up to? It's like, wow, like this is like what I want to do. Like who were those guys? Who were those comedians you looked up to and said, this is what I want to do?
myself. I would tape myself and watch my set after every show. Honestly, I really I never went to watch shows. A couple times a friend would hit me up and be like, "Hey, let's go watch so and so." I probably did that like 3 times, but it was just like whoever was playing. I never actually, aside from Chris Rock, sorry, in 2008 when he was working on his Kill the Messenger show, me and Hassan bought tickets and we went and watched him, and we were just like, that was the only time that I went to watch a comedian with the intent of being like, "Whoa."
And the thing is, you're from, well, obviously, you did 16 years of comedy and you're still going at it. And you're really doing well in this whole TikTok viral era. But some comedians, when they talk about comedy and the galore and just the whole atmosphere of it, there's nothing like the 90s, 2000s with the HBO special. In your opinion, just like a pure fantasy question, if it was up to you, would do you love this viral TikTok, social media, quick 1 to 2 minute videos, or would you prefer having that 1 hour HBO stand up special that the whole world gets to see and talk about for the next few years as far as the influence and the information?
That's a great question. That's a great question because my dream was always to get the HBO special. That was the old model. And if we were still in the old times, it would be that. But we're in the new times where it's more meaningful to be able to connect with your fan base directly through these short clips. And I had a lot of resistance to social media at first for all the traditional reasons, like we shouldn't be spending our time on there. It's, it's not the greatest representation of you. You're burning your material. All of these things. So I was very resistant to it. But as time went on, I adapted, and the thing is, the industry gave me some chances. I gave the industry some chances, and it didn't work out. Some comedians, they hit it off with the industry. They got on every TV show they ever wanted to. They had agents, managers. That didn't work out for me for whatever reason. So by 2018, 2019, it was pretty clear after like 12 years in the game that the industry wasn't going to give me a shot. And so this revolution, this social media revolution gave me a chance to actually grow a fan base in a way that I wasn't going to be able to with the old model. So I'm very thankful for this, and I like it. I'm actually, and I'm catering. I'm changing the way I do my craft for this. I'm writing new material all the time and just putting out more stuff as often as I can to relate to people and build a fan base and connect with them directly.
I gotta say, like, I think TikTok also helps comedians or anybody who's a creator, because I came across you through TikTok, and it was that joke about like about Christmas being a Palestinian's birthday, and obviously you explaining that. That's
Oh,
so
okay,
for me.
okay,
I
yeah,
think like,
yeah.
just to add on to your point, Mo, and to your question, yeah, I think obviously like every comedian dreams to have their own Netflix special, but also I think TikTok also helps on the side into like any social media platform, because if people are obviously like filming or like people come across, they're gonna share that, and depending on that joke, that can go really viral.
If you can do both, obviously, I mean, because like when you get a professionally shot special, like from HBO or Comedy Central, like these 8K cameras, they look so pristine in a way on these TikTok clips that your other clips don't. So if you can get those and cut them up and get those viral, then yeah, I mean, that's the full package.
Talk to us about your whole method when it comes to writing new bit and material. I know you said you love information and you love giving it out as soon as possible. Are you one of those comedians that goes on stage, kind of freestyle your material, or are you those that will do research first, take some notes, then do the set, and then based on the feedback, revise it, and then do another set, and then continue on until you have a full bit? Like, what's your whole writing process?
I do both. I do both. It depends on what I feel. If I feel like doing a lot of research on something and I really want to go in research to it, I will. If I feel, for lack of a better word, lazy, or like I don't know what my angle is on something and I kind of want to feel how the crowd feels about it first, then I'll bring the premise on stage and kind of allow them to help me write the rest of it. But I use all the methods because that's also what keeps it interesting for me. If I had one method that I used all the time, I would probably get really bored. So I like to switch it up.
And regarding like your whole process and thinking when it comes to comedians, people just try to typecast comedians that those people are just go on stage and tell jokes, but comedians are very creative and it translates different skills, whether it's screenplay, whether it's acting, whether it's broadcasting. Like, as far as you doing comedy for 16 years, where have you seen your skills transfer as far as different fields that other people might know you for or might be surprised to find out they're actually interested in these different kind of things and you do it really well?
Yeah, well, not a lot of things, but I will say that it's definitely helped translate into acting and hosting and writing, which are the traditional things that a stand up can do with their skills. But hosting specifically, I love hosting. I love being on camera, talking directly to camera, and introing things and saying, "All right, and here we go." I really love doing that, and comedy's definitely helped me with doing that. Acting as well. I haven't been able to act as much as I want to because, like I told you, I'm not really. I never really had industry chances, so I never really got to go out for a lot of roles because I was dropped by a bunch of agents. But that doesn't mean I can't act on my own and do sketches and stuff, which that's my own, fault or responsibility for not having done that enough yet, but I still want to. But comedy definitely helps with that. And there's writing. You can write a screenplay, you can write a movie, you can write a TV series, you can write a sketch, whatever you do. Like the art of writing a joke feeds into that. So all these things, comedy helps with, and things that I have done in small amounts that people may know me for.
I think one of the hardest parts is pursuing something other than school, right? And I'm not sure for you if you had any other plans before, like becoming a comedian, or that was the always goal. But what is your advice to people who are going to go to comedy, or I guess within the acting, because it takes a lot of discipline, obviously, and a lot of consistency. So what was motivating you? Like if you failed a couple times, like maybe like you got your jokes bombed, what would allow you to like go back on stage and say, no, I'm gonna continue doing this?
Well, you definitely have to have at your foundation knowing that you are funny and you're supposed to be doing this. And usually you'll get that from years and years of making people laugh in your younger ages. I mean, usually if your friends haven't told you a number of times that you're supposed to be a comedian, you're probably not supposed to be a comedian. Like I think that's the literal prerequisite. Like if only you think you're funny, I mean, prove me wrong. I just don't. I've never heard of anybody whose friends never told them they were funny, and then they suddenly go on stage and start crushing it. Um,
Yeah.
Definitely possible. It would be a little adversarial. It'd be like, I'm going to prove these motherfuckers wrong. Uh, but I think most people I know, including myself, friends would always tell me. And certainly, there's people who don't know me well or knew certain side of me, and they're like, "Oh, I never thought that he could do comedy." Like, motherfucker, you never knew me. You know what I mean? You never hung around long enough and made me comfortable enough to tell jokes around you. But most of my friends who know me knew that that was me, and most comedians I know have that same story. So you should have that as your core, and maybe you bomb the first time. Some people it goes well the first time. Some people they bomb the second time. But after you've done five, or 5 to 10 sets, there should be at least one in there where you were so funny that it's like, this is why I'm doing it.
And I'm assuming you're in LA, and if you are, or if anything at all, have you done a set at the legendary and famous Comedy Store?
I'm not in LA at the moment, but yes, I do sets at the Comedy Store quite often. Hope to be there on Monday.
And how is it? What was it like going there for the first time? Whether you went there for a show and actually being on stage, because the Store is so synonymous and infamous and legendary in the space of comedy for what it's done for over the past few decades. Was it like being there and just seeing people on the come up, and even just being there and knowing that you're in a space of just history?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of my favorite venues in the comedy game, and certainly unique. I first got the privilege of working there when I was about a year into comedy and doing a tour. And we came down, we did a show in the main room at the Comedy Store, and just the feel of that room was so special. It was so unique, and it was such a great show. Um, Over time, spending more time there, I realized that they say it's haunted, and I definitely agree. I definitely feel like the spirits of dead comedians are watching you and deciding how you're going to do that night. I used to produce a show in the belly room for about 2 years, and that might be my favorite room in the Comedy Store because it's so intimate and such a special stage. And the comedy ghosts always let me have a really good time there. The main stage is really really cool to show your big game chops, and then the original room is a great place to bomb and learn about who you are.
Speaking of performing, like now or even like when you feel like you're about to bomb, how do you gauge the audience and how do you control the audience? I think one of the hardest things as a comedian is because like you're putting yourself on the spot saying jokes and sometimes it might not work. So how do you control the audience? Because the first time I went to a comedy show was like a couple like months ago. What was it? A couple months ago. And some people did bomb, like no one was laughing. So how does a comedian, even yourself, say, oh, like shoot, no, they're not laughing. Like how do you adjust yourself immediately? Does that affect you on stage, or like do you snap out of it and go back to a different joke?
It affects you if you really were hoping for a laugh in that moment or really expecting a laugh in the moment because you've done the joke a number of times and you know that's where the laugh's supposed to go, and then they don't laugh. That's very disappointing. I try not to comment on it if it happens just once, might be a fluke. If it happens a couple times, I'll comment on it. I can't help and be like, hey guys, just letting you know these jokes work. You don't. Jokes are work. You're broken. What's going on? Um, but people don't love when don't being loved told that they're broken, even if they are. So I try not to do that if I can hold it back. But you speak of controlling the crowd. I never seek to control a crowd. It's not how I look at it. I mean, there is a thing called crowd control, but I never see it as like, how am I going to control this crowd? I let the crowd come to me. I present myself in a way that I let them come to me. They come to my energy to seek punchlines, to seek, whatever creative art form they're seeking by attending this performance. And I let them come to me. And that's basically my method, that I let them know that I have some things to say and that if they want to hear them and at full capacity, they're going to have to listen and come to me. And so that's kind of the intention I go on stage with.
And that's a beautiful point because it feels as if like it's a mutual agreement and understanding. Like you said, if I'm going to open myself
Exactly.
to
Yeah.
you, by all means, you must accept what comes out of this. And then we leave. We're leaving on an understanding that we're going to be better people, going to hear new ideas and
Yeah.
new perspectives, right?
Yeah,
But if you
Right.
come
exactly.
into this agreement, seeing otherwise and wanting to see something that I didn't say and you feel angry, then obviously it was never meant to be and you came with the wrong intentions.
Yeah,
And
facts.
talk to us a
Yep.
little bit more about that energy on stage because there's something about that energy when people are just laughing and just giving you that raw communication of like, yes, we understand you. Yes, we want to hear more from you. Yes, you spoke about this point that relates to myself, my friends, my family. Like, what is that energy? What does it do for you on stage? What kind of like dopamine is just going through your brain in that moment?
Yeah, I never really like I don't see the thoughts that I'm having. I don't record them or feel like I know what my thoughts are saying. It all happens so quickly. Really, if anything, I'm just looking for connections on what to say next. Um, but rarely do I like have a clear thought where it's like, oh, here's my thought. It's more just like, all right, what's next? What's next? What's next? What's next? What's next?
And when it comes to decompressing, comedians they do so much. The day in the life of a comedian is just more than being on stage. Like you said, it's a whole writing process, research, thinking about the jokes, traveling from city to city, and having to deal with hotels and different foods of that sort, and then chaos with people and commotions, and just that downtime, people do not acknowledge or understand the downtime and how important and essential it is for a comedian to have time for themselves to decompress before going back on stage. And for a lot of the matter, people might associate comedians being like, I don't know, standoffish, um, just like kind of rude or stuff. Like, how do you deal as a comedian when it comes to not being on stage, having that downtime, being to yourself? Do you like to meditate? Do you like to go for walks? Do you like to be with friends? Do you like to be by yourself and just think things out? Like, tell us about the life of a comedian off stage.
Osama, why'd you laugh at that?
Going on a walk is why I laughed on that because I feel like he was taking a shot at me.
Oh, you take a
Yeah, I
lot of
take a lot
walks?
because to be honest with you, people call me old because I take a lot of walks. That's why I was laughing.
That's funny. Well, I that's exactly what I do. I go on walks. Of all the things you said, that's what I do. I go on a few walks a day just to kind of like be in my own space. But yeah, I like to be alone. I like to spend time with friends occasionally, but mostly I like to be alone and I like to go on walks like Osama, the old man over here. Uh, but but yeah, I think that like the thing you have to learn at some point is that you have to create your own space for yourself. Because if you're extremely successful and there's a demand for you to be in every city every different night, and you have an agent and manager who doesn't really give a shit aside from anything from making money, you are going to be out. You have to be the one to make your own space to create your mental health. And you'd be surprised, or maybe you wouldn't be surprised, on how much space we need. Um, I can go a month of doing shows straight. That's fine. I can do a show every night for a month, and take a break. I mean, I don't know how much you guys looked me up, but I once did 1,000 nights in a row, so I can go for a stretch. But there comes a point in there where it's too much, and you need to create the space for yourself. And for some people, it may be a couple nights off every week. For some people, maybe a couple nights off every month. Um, for me, it just depends. But I like to at least create one night off a week for myself on average.
Yeah, how do you get inspired by like writing jokes? Like, do you sometimes like a conversation with a friend, a situation that happens, like when you're like saying jokes on stage? Aside from like sometimes is it, like from like historic stuff, like how do you come up with these jokes? Is like a lot of it. I know like you asked that before, but like the inspiration from it, where does it happen? Is like do you watch a lot of news, a lot of politics? Do you do your research sometimes? You like I want to see what's on the news, and you like
I do podcasts.
Beyond podcast.
I get on people's podcasts. I judge them by the
This is classic.
720p.
that is not me. I just want to say it's
Yeah.
this guy and his African household.
Thank you.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah,
Oh,
thank
my
you for the
God,
African
African.
shout.
You know I can say that more because I've known
Uh,
you for 20 years.
no, that's true.
I'm
I
in
mean, are you in
Canada,
Africa right now,
but
Mohammed?
it feels like you're back home in the motherland.
Okay, so his African Canadian household, Osama. Let's be a PC here. Yes, I go on people's podcasts and I find material. Well, it's everything in life. You go to the store, something crazy happens, write that shit down. If your friend says something ridiculous, write that shit down. You see something in the news, write that shit down. Write that shit down. It should come from everywhere and everything. I don't use any specific source to generate material other than like what life is constantly throwing at me.
Actually, this is a good question then. Do you respect when comedians have writers
Yeah,
to come with material for them? People don't see it, but it's kind of like an unwritten rule for those, you know? So have you seen that yourself where you might be in a comedy store or another kind of place, and then see a person go on stage
yeah,
and the people in the crowd
yeah.
writing the material and stuff? Like, how does that make you feel? It's like,
I know a lot of comedians. Yeah, I know. I have a lot of friends who have written for comedians and their hours and all sorts of things. And I think whatever it is, you got to make your money. You got to do what you got to do. And I understand when you get big and famous and you want to keep delivering the goods to people, you want to come at your best, and you might hire a writer to do that. The way I see it is for stand up. If I'm on stage, I want to be the one who wrote that shit. I'll get some tags from some friends, or a friend might be like, "Hey, try framing it this way," or like, "What if you said this?" That's all good because I give to comedians too. I'd be like, "What if you said this?" or "Here's a tag idea." That's what we do. So tags, helping frame, like if somebody else helps me, just like I help them, that's all good. But I don't want to hire a writer to write my hour. If I have a TV show, it's a completely different story. If I have a TV show where I'm presenting you entertainment and jokes in that show, I might say a joke that somebody else wrote. That to me, it makes total sense. But for stand up, I want you to see the joke that I wrote.
and as far as that TV show, every comedian has like an idea, a premise of their story, what it be about, which actors would love to have on the show. Have you ever thought about as far as your own TV show and who would be on it as far as the cast?
Yeah, I've had some thoughts, but it's not finished yet. That's the thing. Like some comedians have a very clear cut idea of what their sitcom would be or what their show would be. For me, my life has always been like a blur. It's been a mix of a lot of different things. So I haven't quite put it together. Like I could make a show that's, like similar to like the styles you have. Like, I love shows like Rami and Mo, who are friends of mine, who have made like a very contemporary feel to their storylines, and they both have very unique stories. And like, I could make a show like that, but it wouldn't be. I would be just be ripping off of their style. I would want to present it in a way that's unique to me, and and that somehow meshes with my angle. So I'm giving that more time. To me, like the show about Sammy Obeid, I want to do it one day, but not yet.
And using comedy as a medium to not only express yourself, but get people to understand you in a way they might not otherwise. Do you feel as if, even through your comedy and even you growing every single year and getting better with material, for those who might not like your style or those who might watch comedy for the first time, do you think it's fair when they might watch your thing for 2 to 3 minutes and then just judge it as nonsense or terrible or just like not worthy of quality?
That's the beauty of this new social media age is I get to experience that every day. I get to experience a couple people every day with that mentality. They'll judge me off of a clip or two and be like, "Fuck this! This is whack. This comedian
That's cap.
sucks." Somebody will watch a minute of you and be like, "This is the worst comedian in history." Like you just watched 1 minute. And not only that, it'll be like a minute that other people saw and really enjoyed. The audacity of this fucking idiot to say that I'm the worst comedian of all time because of 1 minute that other people like. That's how self centered people are in this world. They'll watch something, they'll hear people laughing, they'll see people commenting love, laugh emoji, dead skull emoji, eggplant, water droplets emoji, and yet they'll still be like, oh, this is the worst comedy. This is not funny. This is garbage. Like, you're an idiot. You're not paying attention to reality. Continue to live in that hole. Someday you might realize that I'm a good comedian.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to deal with that every fucking day. And it builds strength. It makes you realize that, yes, I can be better. That clip could have been better. Because when you get a good clip, you get a lot less of that.
Yeah.
I've had a few clips where I don't think I've ever had a clip where it was like no negative feedback. But I've had a few clips that were like so good that you just can't even that's you don't even see that stuff because it gets lost in the middle of
It
praise.
honestly, just to add on to your point, haters, are, in my opinion, are just dumb because like you're hating on a video, which is helping someone else get more analytics. Like you're gonna like crap on someone's video, which in the end of the day is it help. It's just
Totally.
like you're spitting up, it's coming right back at you.
Right.
Like it makes no sense. And in my head, I'm like, how
Totally.
was
So I usually when I get that, I'll throw fuel onto the fire because it's just like no, keep no, yeah, yeah, just give the beast some meat,
well if you don't me
talking.
ask like I'm assuming you've had hecklers in your show, someone try to like outsmart you, and so. For you or actually any other comedian, how do you handle that? Because to me, I've always found it for me like sometimes if my friends are roasting me, you take a while to like respond. But for you, you're on stage, someone trying to make a fool out of you. How do you shut them down?
Well, there's two scenarios. There's number one where the heckler is in fact smarter than you, and they may or may not win. They'll win if you're not that funny. If they're smarter than you and you're not that funny, the heckler is going to win, undoubtedly. Um, if they're smarter than you but you're funnier than them, you'll find a funny way to shut them down. If they're not smarter than you, they're done. It's over. Like you're gonna find a way to make them look like a complete idiot. That case is way more common. There's a few cases where the heckler is smarter than the comedian, smarter and funnier, and those situations happen to a lot of novice comedians on a daily basis. But most of the time, the heckler is dumber than you. Why? Because they're heckling. Heckling is an inherently dumb thing. You are attending a comedy show. You're being disrespectful. The only times where it's kind of warranted is if the comedian's so bad and saying things that are so fucked up, somebody has to step up and say something and create some humor and lighten the situation. Which even in that case, it's still not a good idea. But there are times where it makes a little more sense. But most of the time, hecklers by default are dumb.
I have a quick question. What's your favorite book?
My
Yeah.
favorite book. Um, Let me give me a couple years. I'll get back to you on that. I don't really, I don't really have a favorite book. I've read a handful of books in my life. I'm not a huge bookworm, to be honest. Like if I told you like the book that has probably like got me the most excited, it's a book about calculus. It's not going to be an answer that anybody likes. Um, yeah, I've read a handful
Well,
of
the thing
books, but
is,
I'm not a
like you
huge
said, the
bookworm.
math humor, that's something that's not really popularized or even known for in the art of comedy. Like, what made you want to combine those two different fields
Yeah.
into one? Because I hate math, I love comedy. I never thought that the possibility of those two could ever be mixed. When you watch your content and your style, you do it in such a way that's amusing, clever, and it's also exciting for those who are not interested or don't like the field of math within itself. So how are you able to take those two different things, combine it, and
Right.
make it a way that's very compelling for those who definitely hate the idea of math?
Right. Well, I wasn't expecting that to happen. I majored in math. I was always good at math from a very young age. Math was always very easy to me, and I was always like top of my class. Most comedians were not academics. We get by, and we have a report card of C's, like just enough to get by. I was like top of my class, curve setting in nearly every math class I ever took. Kids would copy off my homework. Kids would be friends with me in high school just so their parents knew they were friends with the top person in the class. Um, that's my math background. I ended up doing comedy. It was a surprise to some people, not a surprise to others. And when I started comedy, I didn't even touch the topic of math because it didn't seem funny to me. It didn't seem what people would want to talk about in a comedy club. At one point, I wrote a math joke, a simple math joke, which has gone viral, fortunately, finally, this last year. The joke is just that people hate math, but half of us are good at it. Half of us are technically above the 50th percentile. And if you don't know what that means, you're below it. I wrote that joke about 2 years in, and it started getting laughs, like from normal people. And I was like, holy shit, like I'm getting laughs at a drunk comedy club off of a joke about central tendency. And I started writing a few more jokes like that, and people would start to compliment. They'd be like, "That's a really good joke." And I started doing sets for people like where there was like math people in the audience, like more math jokes, more math jokes. So I started writing more and started seeing what I could get away with, like how smart I could get without alienating the crowd. And I found limits. I found, like jokes that were like really, really smart and people, most of the crowd wouldn't be into them, but it would please a lot of people. And then I found jokes that were more accessible to everybody. And it was fun doing both. And as time went on, I realized that that was a unique angle that no other comedian was doing. And people started to know me as like the math guy. And I was like, all right, cool. This is something that I can do. And math is endlessly interesting. There's endless topics in math, so there's always more creative ways to find ways to integrate it into my set.
And with that, I would like to say thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for coming on the podcast. As far as like final word advice and just steps for those who want to be comedians or anyone that has an idea, don't know where to start, don't know how much work it will take, don't know how much years it might endure as far as suffrage, how many people might say no, telling them they're crazy, they can't do it. How do you fight the good fight and how do you make it through to the other side? Like you said, when you're actually getting those checks, when you're actually traveling to different places and countries and seeing different people, in order to get to the finish line, you have to start from somewhere and take that first step. So, what advice can you give to us, yourself, and those listening to go from 0 to 100?
Number one, get a Riverside Pro account. You need 1080p. You need all your podcasts to be in 1080p.
Oh,
Riverside Pro allows you to record for longer than an hour. You'll be able to do podcasts and have people from all around the world in high resolution. This is extremely important. If you do this, you can be successful. Um, now, let's say you don't have a pro account. Perhaps you're in an African Canadian household. Perhaps you go on a lot of long walks like an old man.
oh, this is
There are
amazing.
ways. There are ways you can still be successful even with these shortcomings. Now, anybody with a dream who wants to do an art form of some sort, it has to start with a dream. It has to start with a vision, right? You have to have you have to be able to see yourself doing that thing. You want to be the best podcaster in the world, you have to see yourself being the best podcaster, having the guest you want. You have to see yourself having Mark Zuckerberg on your podcast or whatever it is. You have to have the vision, okay? So having a vision is extremely important. You have to be able to close your eyes and see the damn thing that you want to achieve. And the best thing to make that vision happen is high resolution on your podcast, 1080p. You have to see the vision in 4K, 8K if you can. If you're seeing your vision in 720, you're not working hard enough in your mind. Okay? So get that vision at least 1080 or above in your mind and
Actual
see it
recording
crystal
is in actual
clear.
high quality, by the way.
Okay. I believe it. I see myself. It says 720 next to my name. I'm a little concerned. I have a Riverside Pro account. We could have used mine. You could have borrowed mine. Just ask me next time. Because when I record in that, it does say 1080 next to it. So I don't want to disappoint you, but this is recording in 720. That said, have a vision. You have to believe. You have to believe that you are good at that thing and that you deserve the success that you want. A lot of people don't have this. A lot of people, they listen to the haters too much. They doubt themselves. Believe me, I've doubted myself. I doubt myself every day. I see these comments on videos like, this guy fucking sucks. I doubt myself. It happens all the time. But you have to have underneath all of this bullshit, under this shell that we put on to the outside world, in your core, you have to know that you are destined to do that thing. You have to have that vision. You have to have it in 1080 or above. But once you have that vision, you can tell everybody else to fuck off when they give you that negative energy. You can work towards that thing and work every day. Work tirelessly. Know that you can work harder than everybody else. It's okay. You don't have to work harder than everybody else all the time, but you have to know that you're willing to. You have to know that you want it that much. You have to know that you deserve it. You believe in it yourself, and that you're willing to work harder than everyone else to get it. And if you have all those three things and a pro account in Riverside, then you got it.
I'm gonna buy a webcam after
Next
this.
time, Osama, next time we interview Sammy, I'm going to be using a red camera.
No.
Right?
Forget
I got
that.
you.
We're
Don't worry.
forget. We're gonna go to LA.
Okay. We're gonna go to LA. We're gonna shoot cinematic cameras. All right.
Cinematic cameras. Forget red cameras. That's just too small.
Yep.
Let's use cinematic cameras.
All cinematic all day.
You guys thought we were done? I don't think so. We still gotta wrap it up. Please follow me at Kusa300. Follow my co-host Muhammad at Muhammad.global. Make sure to follow our page at Instagram. Also, make sure to subscribe to all our platforms. We drop every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Thank you. We'll see you next week.